Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thanks for tuning in. You are listening to the Networking RX podcast. Today we're going to talk about how to be a connector. I stumbled across an article online. Actually, it was on a website. It was on Matt Ward's website. Matt Ward is a professional speaker. He speaks on topics related to helping companies increase their word-of-mouth referrals, word-of-mouth marketing, very closely akin to networking. A lot of the subjects he talks on crosses over into the realm of professional networking, business connections. He's also the author. He wrote a book, and not surprising, it relates to a lot of the things he talks on, but the name of his book is More: Word-of-Mouth Referrals, Lifelong Customers, and Raving Fans, and that's you can get a printed version. I have a printed version. There's also a Kindle edition. At any rate, I stumbled across an article that he wrote, and I will provide a link to it in the show notes. But the article is entitled How to Be a Connector. And it's a short article, and obviously I'm not going to read it because I'm not very good at reading, but I did want to talk about the 6 points that he brings up in the article, because I think there's certainly there's certainly some insight in each one of these things. There are some of these things I do a really good job at. There are some of these things that I could do a much better job at. And I'm sure everybody listening is probably kind of in that same boat, maybe not the exact boat I'm in, but they will hear things and say, okay, you know what, I could be doing better at this. You know what, I pretty much do a decent job at that. So without any further ado, let me kind of jump into this article and how to be a connector. As he indicates in the start, if you want more referrals, and if you're in business, if you're driving revenue, whether you work for somebody or it's your own business, if you want more referrals, you need to be connected, constantly connected to people who will give those referrals. That's common sense. It's kind of one of those duh statements. Without those connections, without that constant contact, or reasonably constant contact, you're going to fall off of people's radar and they're not going to give you referrals. So you want to stay connected to these individuals. But he quickly points out in the article that these connections that you have ultimately lead you to become established as or perceived as a connector, perhaps in your geographic region, maybe within an industry. And your geographic region certainly can change. Certainly it's different from person to person. For some people, it might be just a small community. For other people, it might be an entire state. For others, it might be a larger geographic region, say the Midwest or the Northeast. For others, it might be national or worldwide. It just depends upon who you are and what you're selling, but we all kind of have a geographic region. And obviously, the industry is going to change depending upon who you are and what you're doing. Mortgage lenders have a different industry than those who are, let's say, chiropractors. But you become a connector within that, and being a connector in your, we'll call it a community, your geographic region and community, leads you to be a intermediary to others. And that's a good place to be in, because people then come to you. And people coming to you is great because it beats the tar out of having to chase people around. People coming to me looking for help connecting them is certainly something I enjoy doing, but by them coming to me and me helping them, it sets in motion natural forces, not with everybody, but with most people, that they want to turn the tables. They want to find opportunities to help me in return, to connect me in return. And I constantly get that question, and sometimes it's a difficult question for me to answer. How can I help you, or how can I connect you? but it's a good problem to have, having people come to me and looking for that. And it's a good problem for you to have, and certainly becoming that person where you're kind of fielding comments, your people are coming to you to be connected, is a good place to be. So what Matt talks about in the article is he gives 6 steps to establish yourself as a connector in your community. And they're 6 simple steps. Simple, not always easy, and there's a difference there. Simple in, okay, it's easy to understand, or it's simple to understand. Not easy, meaning sometimes it's difficult to execute. And maybe it's not difficult to execute per se, but it might be difficult to be consistent in trying to execute it. And like anything, consistency is key. Consistently eating well is great for health. Consistently exercising is great for your health. Consistently investing is great for your wealth. Consistency is important. People who work out the first 2 weeks of January and they work out really, really hard are much worse off than the person who, 2 or 3 days a week, starting out January that first week, 2 or 3 days a week the second week, 2 or 3 days a week throughout the entire year is going to be much better off. That consistency really pays off. So the things that Matt talks about, really to be effective with them, there needs to be a level of consistency. And that's an important point. And that's why I say some of these things are simple. They're simple to understand. They're not necessarily easy, because you've got to get yourself in that pattern of consistency. At any rate, Matt Ward with Breakthrough Champion, his first point is go to networking events frequently. Frequently. Now, the more events you attend, as he points out in here, the more people you're going to meet. That's certainly simple. But you'll also reconnect with people that you already know. And sometimes people overlook that. And he brings that point up. It's really a powerful thing. It's about building relationships. Networking is about building relationships and going to these events. Yes, you can meet new people. But if all you're ever doing is meeting new people, you're going to be a mile wide and an inch deep. And you do need to get a little deeper with people to develop those relationships. And sometimes going to events and being seen at events by the same people and having the opportunity to talk to those people on a consistent basis, especially if they're not within your circle, your sphere that you're seeing on an ongoing basis otherwise, when you reconnect with those people, it provides you an opportunity to develop relationship. You become known, you become liked, you become trusted. Again, there are those 3 words. So getting to events frequently is important. It's important to be seen as a connector. The more you are seen, the more you are kind of acknowledged as being out there and being connected. The second point he makes is connect with people on LinkedIn. Connect with people after the event on LinkedIn. So you've met with somebody, get an opportunity to talk to them, connect with them on LinkedIn. Now, a couple points that he brings out in this discussion is, one, you can certainly do it at the event. You have the ability on LinkedIn. There's an app that you have on your phone where you can find out who the people at the event are on LinkedIn. But if you're standing with somebody, you can say, hey, would you mind if we connect on LinkedIn, and go ahead and connect with them right then and there. But if you're not doing it there, certainly within 48 hours after the event, send them a connection request. Listen, we met in person. It was great to meet you. Let's be connected on here as well and see where this takes us. When I meet people for the first time, I certainly like to look at their profiles, and because in a conversation, not everything comes out. So you can start looking at somebody's profile and going down and seeing where they went to school. I was looking at somebody, I met somebody, was talking to them. I looked on their profile and saw that where they went to college, and there was some commonality between that particular person and my assistant. And so I started asking some questions if she knew my assistant. And, it's just you find out a ton about that. But what Matt talks about in here is when you send these requests, you want to personalize them. You want to remind people that you met at the event. What he doesn't say But I want to make the point here. This is not an opportunity to pitch somebody. LinkedIn's not an opportunity to sell. Being at the event is not an opportunity to sell, and I've mentioned that before. You're just connecting with them. Hey, let's just have another means of connecting. That way you have my information, I have your information. Maybe you've exchanged cards, but there's certainly the ability to really kind of dig a little deeper on one another by connecting on LinkedIn. I certainly like to do that. I probably need to do a better job of connecting with people on LinkedIn. When I talk with people, and I'm connecting with people nationally, when I'm talking with people on the phone, I generally create a record in my database, and I will also try and connect with them on LinkedIn, just so I have both those. And I'll copy whatever information I can find on their LinkedIn profile. I'll probably put a link to their LinkedIn profile, but what other information. So if I'm following up with them, and I generally do, and we'll talk about that, when I'm generally following up with them, I have lots of other information. Moving along, the third point he makes in his article, and I'll read this as a short paragraph: follow up with a brief message. After you connect, simply follow up with a brief message about meeting them at the event. This step helps seed the relationship and getting it moving in the right direction. So many people fail to send a brief message, and as such, when you send a message, it helps cut through the noise. People are notoriously bad at following up. Or if they do follow up, they're bad at the follow-up, meaning it becomes a pitch real quickly. But sending a nice follow-up is a great way to raise your level of exposure in their mind. You really get on their radar. One of the things Matt has talked about, he's got a whole series of videos out there. I'll link to this article, and from there you can get to his website, which is breakthrough-champion.com. He has lots of articles on there, and he has lots of YouTube videos if you do a search on Matt Ward. But one of the things he talks about, I'm certainly a follower of Matt Ward. One of the things he talks about is sending a personal note, sending a handwritten note, getting cards made up, hey, it was nice to meet you, referencing the conversation, but that's a real separator from the average Joe or Jane out there who generally doesn't do it, or if they do it, they feel like it's an opportunity to do a pitch. His fourth point: check in with your contacts at least every 6 months. And what he's saying is ideally send them a LinkedIn message, perhaps, or an email, depending upon what you're comfortable with. Some people I notice they like to communicate on LinkedIn. That's their preferred means of communicating. To be honest, I'm more of an email type person because I feel like I can flag something and get back to it or set reminders, and I'm not as comfortable using LinkedIn, mainly because I get so many messages, things tend to get buried, and the messaging on LinkedIn, I don't think, just my personal opinion, is robust enough that you can do those things. I'm just not as comfortable with it. But either or, you've got to kind of know your audience, and if some people are really into LinkedIn, then I'll go that route. But I will try and follow up with people. What I do, and I've got people, I try and do it quarterly. What I'll do is I will follow up and certainly see what they're up to. Sometimes I'll share an article depending upon what I know their interest to be, something I think that will add value to them. I'm never pitching. I might say, hey, if you know of somebody, could you introduce me? Just to kind of remind them what I'm about. I'll certainly offer to, hey, let's get on a call if you want to catch up on something. I want to know what's going on in their world, but I will send those out periodically. Again, I'm more on a 3-month cycle. He's saying at least 6 months, so I'm certainly within what he's saying. But you want it to be somewhat consistent. Now, do you keep doing that no matter what? What I tend to do is, and I meet a lot of people, and people are falling in and out of my network. If people become unresponsive to things, and I don't need to get a response in 24 hours from everybody, but if I never hear back after sending a couple, hey, what's up kind of emails, I just get the sense that they're not interested in having an ongoing professional relationship. And that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. they just have determined that there's not a lot of value in keeping up a relationship with me. And that's okay, and they kind of fall out, but other people are kind of falling in. I think probably at any point in time, I might have 30 to 50 people who I'm continually going back and forth with, and they're in all sorts of different worlds. But I try and follow this advice from Matt and following up, checking in every 6 months or so, probably more frequently with respect to me. Point number 5, and I kind of touched on this, let others know that you're willing to help them connect with people that you know. And that's really kind of the point of the article, is to position yourself as that connector. To position, again, the title of the article is How to Be a Connector. To position yourself as kind of that go-to person, you want to be branded in the minds of others as that person that people can reach out to you for help. Hey, Frank, I'm trying to get on podcasts. Can you help me? I'm trying to get guests for my podcast. I'm trying to meet people in this realm. I've got a book coming out. Who can you help me with to connect me to get this, to get that, to get a cover design, whatever it might be? You kind of want to be that person that they come to because they see you as somebody who can add value. And again, they turn those tables on you. But to become that connector, you've got to let people know that, hey, listen, I'm willing to connect you. I just need to know who. Now, I had an exchange with somebody yesterday. They kind of fired at me, hey, this is who I'm looking to meet, and I won't get into it because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But what they were asking for was something I really didn't understand. And I told them that. I responded, and I said, listen, I know lots of people. I might know somebody like this. But this terminology, you've lost me on this terminology. Maybe we should have a conversation, or maybe if you could explain a little better what this means, that would be helpful to me in helping you. I also talked to somebody else, and they were very clear as to what they were looking for. And I was honest with them. I said, I don't know anybody that fits that. But I'm not giving up on this. I might know people who know people. So again, let's have a quick conversation and kind of brainstorm a little bit as to how I can help you. And they have set up a call with me. And again, I'm going to give them 10, 15 minutes of my time and then a few connections to try and help them, or as many connections as I deem useful for them. But I'm not just going to, hey, I don't have somebody in my front pocket right here to hand off to you. Just give up on it. I'm going to try and help them as to the extent I can. And there are people out there I just can't help. And I don't mean that in a flippant way, but there are limits to what anybody can do. There are limits to who I'm connected with. I'm not really connected in the political realm. I don't know lobbyists. So people coming to me with respect to that, it's not that I have a problem with any of that. It's just that's not where my centers of influence are. I really don't have a lot of connections in there. I guess if I really thought about it, I probably could think of one or two, but sitting here right now, I don't know of anybody. So let others know. His fifth point, Matt Ward's fifth point, is let others know that you're willing to help them in connecting them to others and to the people that you know. Matt's sixth point is use the term connect often. The term connect is a clear indicator that you're willing to help others in their goal of connecting them to people you know. I like that point because I want it to be really clear to people that I'm going to connect them to others. I'm not bringing them a check with their name on it, which is code for I'm not bringing them business, but I'm connecting them to somebody. If you've listened to earlier podcasts, I analogize networking to the game of golf. Golf is just a series of shots down a fairway or down a course. It's not 6-inch putts, and networking is much the same way. We're connecting people. I'm going to connect you, and then it's up to you to take it from there. So again, Matt Ward on how to be a connector. He provides 6 points, and I'll put the link to this in the show notes. 1, go to networking events frequently. Connect with each person you meet on LinkedIn afterwards. Follow up with a brief message. I prefer the handwritten note. Number 4, check in with your contacts frequently, every 6 months. Let others know that you're willing to help them connect. And then the final point he makes is use the term connect often. To wrap up, if you know of an entrepreneur, business owner, or professional that seems to enjoy networking and they appear well connected and or is somewhat involved with a chamber or a professional networking organization, they would be a good person for me to meet. As you know, being networked is vital to success, and receiving referrals is the most effective means of generating business. So if you know of such a person, such of a business professional, work into the conversation this question, and I know it's somewhat rhetorical. If you had a choice, would you rather be a renter or the person who owns the building? Now, they'll probably laugh at that because, again, it's somewhat rhetorical, but they'll likely indicate somehow that they'd like to own the building rather than being the person who pays the owner rent. When they do, indicate that you're familiar with a franchise opportunity through AmSpirit Business Connections, where they're not just paying to be part of a professional network, but rather they're instrumental in building a professional network, i.e. building networking groups and profiting from them. From there, suggest that they contact me using the email we provide at the end of the podcast or the one we provide within the show notes. Or better yet, do this. Email them and me on the same message, connecting the two of us. I'd appreciate that, and that would go a long way to branding yourself as a connector. Have a good day.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.